Okay, today I'm back in the Curzon Street Mayfair Star Sports office with Darran Pierce. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us today,
worries,
Darran.
Simon.
So, for people that don't know, you specialise in lesser-known branches of popular sports. So, non-league football, hunter chases, and Australian jump racing.
Yes, that's pretty much it. I like the almost amateur side of sports. Obviously, not the jumps race in Australia, but that's more recent. Yeah, non-league football. So I'm a Gloucester City fan. I'm from Gloucester originally, so I've been going to watch Gloucester for over 30 years. So there was already that interest in non-league, and then in 2007, the start of the 2007-2008 season, Setanta had bought the rights for what was then the Conference Premier, now the National League. And I had just started working at Coral as a broadcaster, and so they were showing about 70 odd live games a season. So I said, I'll write some previews and record them to go out on air for the customers. And that sort of got me thinking, well, I'm watching all these games, I can sort of, maybe there's an angle here, because Premier League betting, obviously, people are all over it, the bookies are all over, the traders are all over it, it's so heavily watched. Whereas there's probably not many traders watching Setanta's coverage of the Conference Premier. I started buying the non-league paper every week for information, obviously forums. Twitter didn't exist then, so there wasn't Twitter, but Twitter's obviously come in very handy since. And I just thought it's obviously an angle where people aren't focusing most people aren't really focusing their attention, and thought this could be an avenue that could be quite successful. So I started off doing that. I was like, okay, this is going pretty well. And there was a guy who worked in the office called Frankie Monkhouse, who he did some boxing at some stage. He still writes previews around. He worked in the office at Coral, and he wanted to start a website called Fighting Tips, mainly obviously focusing on boxing, which was his area. I used to work with Chris Dixon at Coral as well, so obviously he got him involved to do some horse racing, and I said, I'll put some non-league previews up there. And that went well, and he was trying to get the name out there as much as possible. It wasn't really making any money, so that was sort of the frustration. So we were all doing it for free, essentially. And then after a couple of years, sort of was looking at elsewhere where I could, sort of advertise myself, and found the Punters Lounge forum. I think I started in there about 2011. Posting on non-league football. There was another guy who, Paul Ashton, who he's better than me on non-league football. He was already posting on Punters Lounge, and that's probably why I gravitated there. There was already a very successful non-league punter, so I thought, well, this could be the place to go. Paul doesn't post anymore. He sort of semi-retired, but I still share emails with him, and he'll give me ideas, and some of my selections are sort of like, okay, he's sort of giving me those ideas, and again I send him my previews, so he'll sometimes bet what I put up as well. So it's good to bounce off him. But yeah, so there was already a lot of people looking at the non-league pages of the Punters Lounge forum. So again, that being successful, that again gave me, a lot of people started following. Twitter obviously was a thing then, so it was like you were able to tweet the previews out, and sort of built up a lot that way. And then eventually, if I focus on, because I've sort of gone paid in different areas at different times. So I'll concentrate on the football. So the COVID season, we'll call it, the 2021 season, which was mainly voided for most of the leagues apart from the National League, that was very successful. I was over 100 points up for the season. It was almost too good in some way. Like, it was just almost unsustainable. I think punting on football is very tricky, because I mainly focus on win, draw, win markets. I think it's very hard to make a profit on football. And I think maybe because there wasn't as much going on, obviously people weren't doing quite so much, and I was finding that the prices were going really quickly, especially if I was very, very strong on something, the price was going fast. I was like, this isn't sustainable. It's not fair on people who are following me. They're not necessarily getting the prices that I'm putting things up at. And I was like, maybe I'd gone paid on Hunter Chasers in the past. I thought maybe I should go paid on football, give it a go. I'm pretty bad at advertising myself, and I was actually really nervous about sending out the tweet saying that I was going paid on football, because I thought there'd be a backlash. And actually, it was the opposite. A lot of people said, the popularity, I had to stop taking subscriptions because I was worried that it was getting too far. Because obviously, it's a very niche market that not many people bet into. And if you're getting hundreds and hundreds of subscribers, well, that means the price is going to go very quickly anyway. So there's that balance of wanting enough people to sign up, but also not having too many that you're affecting the price too much. So
can we just before we go into the technicalities of that, can we just talk about the logistics and what you do for the non-league? So I'm assuming that the reasoning, well, as you've said, the reasoning is that you know more than the odds compilers.
That's
with the main football,
yeah,
the odds compilers are basically going to be the exchanges. But in lower league football, once again, the exchanges probably won't be nowhere near so much as a guide. So is knowing more than the odds compilers literally you scouring the local websites, the papers, getting, is it team news and stuff like that that gives you the edge? I mean, what is your actual, getting into the nitty-gritty of your selections, how do you come up with them?
So I think I try and watch as many games as possible. So TNT currently show about 30 or so, mainly one a week. So I'll nearly always try and watch those. They have a highlights program as well for the main league. The National League has started streaming. Obviously, COVID helped because no people could go to the ground, so I was watching a lot of games there streaming.
Does the streaming continue?
And
the point-to-points were streamed during COVID as well.
The point-to-points were streamed, and I mean, for someone who can't go to many point-to-points, that was good that I could watch the streams. But that obviously didn't take off quite so well. I think some of the clubs weren't getting too. Obviously, in the National League, you've got a massive range of clubs. Like you've got. Obviously, Wrexham went up a couple of years ago. You've got Chesterfield who've just gone up this season. You've had Notts County were there during COVID. You've got some big sides getting big numbers, but you've also got some from tiny. Oxford City just got relegated back down again this season. They can only get 200-300 fans. So you've got some sides you will be able to make money out of the streaming, and some who can't. So BT, as it was then before it came to TNT, they had the rights. So once fans were allowed back in the ground, streaming did stop. But Wrexham, especially given their owners, were pressurising the National League to say we want streaming, because obviously they had a lot of fans around the world thanks to the programme and the owners. So the National League sorted it out, and with BT and now TNT, and they started streaming last season, about halfway through, and then this season was the first year they'd done the whole season. And they also brought on board the National League North and South. They found that the National League North and South weren't as popular as they were hoping, so they dropped. They weren't showing all the games, they're just showing the more popular teams. However, the way the streaming works is it's almost a bit like Netflix. You don't pay for a game, you pay, I paid for the season, and you can choose as many games. So I was having 3 or 4 laptop, 3 or 4 screens up, flicking between games, so I was seeing bits and pieces of games. So I've saw more games this season than I've ever seen. So it's incredible. I think it's really helped.
So what are you looking for to come up with your selection?
Seeing how teams are playing, seeing have they been unlucky, should they have won, should they have lost. I subscribe to a site called Y Scout, which I'd imagine quite a lot of the clubs subscribe to now. So that's quite recent. I wasn't usually so database before, but obviously has XGs and whatever. So I also use that as a bit of a guide now, because it also clips up all the shots, so you can see teams had an XG of 2.5. Well, that's very high. And then you look at the shots, and it's like, okay, so they had 3 really good chances that the goalkeepers, in really quick succession. So it's like, well, okay, well, yeah, they maybe should have scored one, but they could be flattered by that high XG, because it was like, well, they didn't have many shots during the game. It was just that one 30-second spell
So
where
you,
they
you
managed.
go in deeper than the figures.
You can look in a bit deeper. So that's very important. So I mentioned the non-league paper, reading match reports, reading quotes from the managers, players is interesting. I find sometimes I don't use fan forums are dying a death a little bit. I find sometimes they can be quite biased. I go on the Gloucester City one obviously quite a bit, and you do see quite a lot of negativity if things aren't going. There's very extremes, and you have to be very careful with what fans think. Fortunately, some people who subscribe to me are fans that, I've got a couple of Kidderminster fans, for example, and they're sort of quite will give an honest opinion of how they see things are going with their club. So you can sort of dig a bit deeper.
Would there be, obviously a lot of bookies price all these matches up.
Yeah.
I assume that once you've put your tips out, there's a lot of money for that match. How long do those prices stand up for?
It depends. If I'm quite strong on there's probably 2 things. If I'm quite strong on a selection, then the price will tend to go. It also depends on when I've put the tip up. I try not to go too early in the week. Like the National League, we usually price up the Monday before the Saturday games. And unless there's something that really stands out, I try to avoid that, because it's good. Like the closer you are to the game, the easier it is to get
the team news
like,
and that sort of thing would be very important.
Yeah, I must. There'll probably be people who punt on football who find this a bit odd, but I don't focus on team news that much. I know there are people who do punt on non-league football and football in general. Like team news is like absolute gospel, so they'll leave it as late as possible. But I've seen so many sides who have had injuries, and they're weak in team, and you feel, oh yeah, they're definitely, there's no way they can win. And then they get a result, they get a draw, or they win, and you're just like, how has that happened? And very often they will, especially if the news has come out. And I always remember one a few years ago. Altrincham were playing Eastleigh at home, and I'd already tipped up. It was on a Tuesday. I tipped up Altrincham. I think it was about 3-172. It wasn't based on team news. But basically, Eastleigh weren't very good away from home. Altrincham had quite good home form, and the Eastleigh manager at the time came out and said, "Oh, we've got loads of injuries. Really struggling for a team." So of course, Altrincham were massively punted off the boards, and Eastleigh managed. It wasn't as bad as he was making out. And they got, I think it was a draw in the end. So I did my money, but the price I ended up going off at, I wouldn't have had the bet in the first place. So there can be massive overreactions to team news in non-league football. I don't think it's quite as significant as it might be elsewhere in the football pyramid.
Would be the substitutes of the players who don't normally get a first team place playing for their lives.
It could be, yeah, it could be. And also sometimes the gap between the first team and the substitutes maybe isn't that big, and also you get quite a high turnover of players during the season. The teams in the National League this season use 40 players during the season. That's my own team. I think we used about nearly 50 during the season. So it's that constant turnover that you get in non-league football that's quite different from elsewhere in the pyramid.